Hello, friends. Great to see you again. Hello, Chris. Hello, Asaf. Hello, everybody all around the
Hello.
world who is there with us. Very good to be
Hey,
back again and see you all.
Yes,
This is a
haven't been
great
here for a
transition.
while. Haven't been here for two
Yeah,
weeks, right?
two
Yeah.
weeks. Yeah, it feels like 2 decades.
Yeah.
We are students of the wisdom of Kabbalah. We are very, very empty inside. No, we're very, very frustrated from everything that life has to offer. We want to know why everything happens. We want to know what we can do about it. We want to know, is there something that's built to last, not any of these fleeting, everything leaving me empty at the end. And it led us to this wisdom of Kabbalah. And not only that, but the wisdom of Kabbalah opens up that this is a special time called the last generation, where humanity, reality, actually, all of reality, is transforming from something physical into something spiritual. Spoiler alert, it's always been spiritual. It has something to do with our perception. So we're looking at what's going on in the world, what we can learn from it. Why is nature presenting? Why is this big integral system presenting itself this way to us? And what can we understand about ourselves and the process we're in by seeing what's going on in the way that this giant system, organic, inorganic system all around us called life, is presenting itself and incarnating itself. So where we ended up today is that if you're from around the U.S., you may have seen this. If you're from Florida or the Caribbean, you certainly have. There's a giant biomass of brown seaweed. It's 5,000 miles long. It's like twice the width of the United States. It stretches from Africa, basically, across the Atlantic to the Americas. Normally, seaweed is mostly below the surface, but this special seaweed called sargassum is covered in these little berries of air, so it floats on the surface. Really interesting. We'll talk about it a little bit. Because it floats on the surface, it becomes home to all kind of fish. Actually, all kind of endangered species are doing great in there. Over 100 kind of fish. Whales are there, turtles are there, crabs are there, shrimps are there. It slows down the ocean. It's a
Say
good
how
place
big it
to.
is again. Just to
Uh,
get the.
so this belt that we're talking about today, although I'm going to also talk about mostly where it came from now to just kind of give you a feel of what a cool story this is. It's 5,000 miles long. So
5,000
basically,
is there
miles.
from
anything else that's 5,000 miles long?
the Atlantic Ocean between
The
Africa
Andes. I think
and
the Andes is
and the
about.
Americas.
The Andes is about
Okay.
5,500 maybe. So
Mm.
it's
So
big. It's huge. It's
yeah, it's very
huge.
long. Um,
Yeah.
so it obviously becomes an issue if you live on the coast there, or if you like to vacation in Tulum, Mexico, or Miami.
There
You
was
have
always a problem
tons.
in Galveston. We always had that
Texas,
problem.
right? You also have it back
Oh
in the Gulf
God,
in there also. So you have
yeah,
tons of
nasty.
rotting sargassum, Sargassum. So
Ah,
it
thanks.
gives off. We'll talk more about it. I just want to give you a high level overview of it. So it gives off, the same thing that makes a fart smell. It's called hydrogen sulfide.
Methane.
It's like
Ah,
rotting,
okay.
rotting egg
Also,
smell.
yeah.
Methane is the
Sulfide.
other one. Methane is the cow
Okay, I guess
farts, I
there's
think,
a
or
couple.
something.
Okay, so I love this story, and at first I thought I was gonna have nothing interested in the story, but if you remember, I also love the ocean current story. I
Yeah, you do.
love, yeah, I did. I love a story where you discover the author, like the depth of the author, the nuance of the author, the inner life of the author, the story. Through that story, you start to
You're
really
almost
feel
getting
what.
me to sing it.
Sing what?
Chris, our friend, not this Chris, the other Chris Fisher,
Oh, that's not.
has this
Which
song,
one?
book author
The book of
story.
their
Yeah, right,
story.
right.
I don't remember
Yeah.
how it goes though. Yeah.
Nice. That would be a good one. I'll try and
Yeah,
find that. We'll play
it's
it
a
at the end.
Kabbalistic song for those who don't know, don't have a clue what I'm talking about. But
Who doesn't
yeah.
know Chris Fisher? Come on.
Ah, there he is, right there. Hey, Chris.
When, yeah, he's here.
Oh,
Yeah.
fish! There we
Author
go.
story.
Yes. So
It's a story
you
of
have to
one
hum it
man
at
living in
least.
one
Yeah.
heart when the lights are shining. All we are is one. All right, Chris. So if you're available to
Okay.
do a song, we'll figure that out. So when we talk about the currents of the ocean, um, so there are these rings that interconnect around the whole planet. These currents of the ocean, and they flow in. They're always flowing, and it's predictable, how they flow. Okay, so
Yeah.
all right. So just how does that happen? So around the equator, closer to the sun, it's hotter. Obviously,
Yeah.
right? So water on the planet is drawn towards the equator. Okay, this is one of the ways. There's a few ways that this whole thing moves, but what I want to talk about is this incredible system that's happening, and then we're going to get back to the seaweed situation and understand it in context.
Okay.
So water is drawn more towards the equator. It's hotter, right? So it's drawn there. What happens when you heat water? It wants to evaporate. So the water gets lighter and moves closer to the poles. Then once it gets there, it disperses. Sorry, not towards the poles, towards the equator. When it gets there, it then disperses back towards the poles where it's colder. So it creates this flow this way. Okay,
Convection or something. Yeah.
I'm not sure what it's called, but when it gets closer, the farther it gets from the equator, the closer it gets to the poles, the Arctic and the Antarctic pole, where it's very cold, the farthest from the sun. So it gets colder, the water gets more dense, and the water falls. The heavier water falls. So you have this constant churning, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But
It's a cycle.
more,
Yeah.
right. More details. There's also 7 continents. 7.
There
Interesting.
are
There's
7.
yeah. See, it's fun. Okay, so there's 7 continents. So they also change the direction of these flows. If there were no continents, there would be a certain kind of churning happening. But you add these continents there, and what happens from the 7 continents, it makes 5 major flows. You have, of course, between imagine from Africa to South America, you have a flow, right? And then between North America and Europe, you have another flow. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how you do this. How you do
Like
these
croutons
things with your
In a
hands.
soup. I like it.
I was
This is
thinking about
nice.
bringing a globe to show it, but yeah, they help each other,
Oh, yeah.
as they spin.
Right.
So, and then you're right, North America and Europe. And so what happens is you take all kinds of, you're like scraping past Africa and like moving stuff over to South America and then taking stuff to South America, moving it over here. And as it comes past here, the Europe, US one is grabbing stuff and moving it around. So like things are like always
I see what you're
mixing
getting.
and sharing, right? And in these big currents, there's also smaller currents depending on other things that are going on, but there's these 5 big ones. Those giant garbage patches I think we talked about.
Yes.
Giant garbage patches in the ocean.
Oh yeah.
The Great
Yeah.
Pacific Garbage Patch. Yeah.
Right. So these currents are what moves all of that garbage to where it goes. So there's like 5 main garbage patches because there's these 5 big currents. Okay. A few more data points. I know this is like a longer intro than we're used to, but I just think it's so fun and it really starts to illustrate everything.
This is great.
Normally when we talk about an ocean, if I were to say like Atlantic Ocean, so if I were to ask you to define like where's the Atlantic Ocean, what would you say?
The Atlantic Ocean.
Between the 2 continents, between North America, or the
America
Americas, and Africa and Europe.
Right. Okay, cool. So normally, almost every time we talk about oceans, we border them by land,
Right.
Right.
right? Okay. There's one sea that is not bordered by land. It's called the Sargassum Sea. Interesting. It's in between, in the Atlantic Ocean, there's 4 of these currents itself within the Atlantic, and there's some kind of whirlpool that happens in the middle of them. There's some area in between all of them called the Sargassum Sea. It's the only sea that's bordered by other seas on all sides, not by any land, right? So somehow nature created an area there, and it becomes more still there in that area,
Okay.
and all of this seaweed. So
Okay.
in the middle of the
So
ocean,
because basically the vortex is happening from both sides, and that actually creates a stillness in the midst of it, in between.
yeah, called the
That's
Sargasso
cool.
Sea.
That's
right.
cool.
Very cool. So Christopher Columbus wrote about it. He came across it. His guys didn't want to get stuck in there, but it's warm.
Too bad you
It's
didn't.
calm. What? Too bad he didn't.
Too bad he
It's
did.
warm. No, it was part of the plan that he found America.
Right, it's part of the plan, exactly.
It was warm. It's calm. Lots of nutrients, and so all kinds of things grow there. Like we said, turtles, fish, whales, all this kind of stuff, right? So
Yeah.
not a huge issue that's there. But here's something also interesting to add more as we build up the suspense of where we're going with this. The Amazon River empties out into the ocean.
Oh,
One of the
that's
things that
really
enters
cool.
out into the Atlantic Ocean, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys know meters. I know feet, and I'm not good at converting it. But okay, 7 million cubic feet. So I don't know if we divide it by 2, 4, 6, 200,000 cubic meters, something. Okay, of water empty from the Amazon into the ocean every second.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so tons
Okay.
of water from the Amazon goes into the ocean every second. Okay, so much that 100 miles out to sea, it's still fresh water from the Amazon.
Uh-huh.
So what happens is because of deforestation, and because of fertilizers, and because of sewage runoff, and because of farm runoff, all of this nitrogen and other organic matter is going out to sea. Okay, also
Okay.
from the Mississippi, which is why Chris was talking about in Texas, Gulf of Mexico. So you have tons of organic matter going into the ocean, and it's hot. It's getting hotter. The ocean's getting hotter. So it's a perfect environment for this to grow more and more and more. Organic matter growing loves nitrogen, right? That's what you put. That's what your fertilizer is. That's what you put in your fertilizer. So when this stuff, okay, so that's a lot of things that kind of tell you this story of like how it's getting there, what is it, and what's happening. So part of it got blown off course from some big storm, and now for whatever reason, it's not for whatever reason. There's many reasons. It's this belt of it is coming across to the Caribbean and to America. It also picks up, absorbs heavy metals, things like that. Okay, so now when it lands on the coast, imagine something this big landing on the coast of Florida and starting to rot.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah.
Okay, so it becomes a big problem. So guys, there's many different directions to go here. I'm interested if any of this caught your attention or what parts of it interested you, and then let's try to understand a little bit about life, ourselves, what this process we're in,
Yeah.
what's going on here.
Yeah.
Well, this is a
all
big
of
deal.
the-
So it's a big deal. You see it all over the news, right?
Yeah, Floridians for sure do.
Yeah. I mean, so it's not just like a news like thing that we took. It's like people are watching it. That's the only reason that I think we're talking about is because it's like a big deal.
Okay. Why is it a big deal? Say, what is the concern? What are going to be the implications, ramifications of this? Who
I
knows?
think it's well. So they say it kills fish and wild. Like as it rots, the water becomes toxic for whatever's living there. But if you
Well, obviously, people can't
Oh, no.
go and go to the beach. That's one.
yeah, that's
that's
the
clear.
problem. That's the big problem.
But is that,
No, that-
the problem? Is that
Yeah,
really
there's not like some kind of tragic situation here that there's too much brown
Okay,
seaweed
and is
on
the
the beach.
size
The
of
problem
it-
is people can't enjoy. I worked all week and I'm taking my family to vacation. I worked all year. I'm taking my family on vacation to
and
the beach.
the
in
giant
Florida.
seaweed monsters
The
now
giant
took
seaweed
the
is
beach.
He can't even swim. He can't even go out into the ocean. He can't sit on the beach.
Okay,
That's
and
the
it
problem.
also smells very, very much.
Amy,
right?
it's okay.
Like
She
it's
said that's pretty foul smelling. All right. She's in Florida, I guess. So
Ah,
Yeah,
Isoki's in
so-
Florida. Okay. Hey, Soki.
So so if
Um,
anyone there knows and wants to tell us, why this is,
it also irritates the skin and the lungs as well. If you're like really
okay.
breathing
so
concentrated.
we can't. This is too much for us, for human beings to be
yeah,
around.
but let's
yeah?
not get carried away that
Okay.
there's some
It's not a natural
the
disaster.
Ukraine-Russian war.
It's not a
like
Michael
big
Bay
earthquake.
movie. It's not a huge.
No.
Okay.
No, but it is very. I mean, if you lived in a great house, you have a safe, warm
Right.
home, an apartment you really like somewhere, and outside is just crap everywhere, just junk, just garbage. Even if it doesn't smell, just piles of garbage everywhere. Right? It's like it affects your life. So it's not like this tragic thing where people are dying and starving, but it's like it is covering all the beaches with
It's
seaweed.
more like come on,
And-
come on, like
Yeah, it's like come on, but it's also
like that level.
It's
Okay.
like 5,000 kilometers, right? And I don't remember what number exactly I saw, but I think it's around 20 million tons.
and it was
20 million
never
tons of anything is
and
insane.
the size of it, the magnitude
This is the
is
biggest.
this is the biggest. This is unprecedented.
Maybe it's been big, a little bit bigger once before something, but it's like getting bigger. Yeah, it's increasing a lot.
Well, I'll tell you what. To me, all of the stuff, the background picture that you talked about, to me it is fascinating because I love seeing, the cycles and patterns of nature. Because to me, it makes it so clear that we're living in a program. That we think about it like it's a giant, 5,000 miles of seaweed. What the hell are we going to do with that? Oh, man. But this is like what we're seeing. This is part of the program. Everything, all of those things that you've described in the how do you say vortex in plural? Vertices? Vortices? Anyway, those things. So,
Vertex is vertices. All right, go ahead.
Vertex. So anyway, that that to me is like you can see the same patterns out there in space, in galaxies, in everything is going round and round. Everything there are cycles in nature that repeat themselves, and all of nature is essentially this fractal of wholeness. And to us, it seems like, oh man, there's this huge seaweed monster and we can't go to the beach. But
Where'd this come from?
So just this kind of juxtaposition is really fascinating to me because, from the way we're looking at it, from a Kabbalistic perspective, nature is beyond the dolphins and the trees and the seaweed and the physical bodies of humans. Nature is the system of laws that stand behind these non-material laws, actually, the program that guides and drives everything that we identify as evolution in time and space. There's a program, it's a thought that we are in. And that's really, really kind of cool.
Imagine if there was an issue. You don't have to imagine. There's actually an issue in Florida right now. They have dredging companies that go out a little bit offshore and pump sand onto the beach to make the beach like 20 feet wider. And then they just go down the whole shore doing this, and it lasts for like 5 years or something until the erosion takes it away again. And then I guess they'll come back because there's homes and taxpayers' homes all along the beach, and the beach is going away. Imagine if nature maybe sent some brown seaweed to stop the erosion. Imagine if nature created some algae or something that was absorbing heavy metals and pollutants out of the ocean.
Right. Hey, nature, you're messing up our plans, man. We got plans, and you're kind of messing them up. I wanted to go to the beach, and you're making it all smelly.
Nature, we wanted to go to the beach. We had it all. We had it all planned. What's going on?
I was saving up all year.
No, we also do want to go to the beach. It's an issue, but if you start to look at the bigger picture of what's going on here and not look at each thing like it's a snapshot, there's such a bigger story.
So when we see a 5,000 miles seaweed monster coming towards us, what we're really looking at is not a random thing. It's not even a thing. We're seeing the program at work. We're part of this program of nature. We're in it. We didn't create it. It created us. It's upper to us. And it guides all that we see towards higher and higher levels of evolution. That's what nature is doing. And so there's nothing redundant in this program. There's nothing random in this program. There's nothing that happens in the system of nature that doesn't perfectly contribute to evolution, to its next level, to its next degree. So in some weird way, us battling against a 5,000 miles long seaweed monster is something that nature needs to happen for evolution to take place, for the next level of evolution to take place. That thought, seeing that through this prism, is interesting.
It's hard to grasp
yeah.
it, though. It's hard to grasp. I mean, if you look at, I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson the other day. He said something like, you know, you have two different ways of looking at it. You can say, you can look at, why does gravity work, and you could go down this whole philosophical discussion, try to understand what it like, why does it exist, why is gravity even there, right? And it's more of a philosophical question. Or you can take the scientific approach and say, what is gravity,
how does it work? Yeah, let's calculate
how does it work,
let's compute it, let's
yes,
yeah
let's use
let's
it, right?
define
And then we can send a spaceship using what we know, right, of gravity, and get to land on the moon, right?
and
so
you can
two
do
different ways
that
of looking at it
without even yet getting to the bottom of what is gravity. That's right.
That's the whole point. Yeah, exactly. You kind of ignore that question, right? That's kind of that's kind of like one approach. But basically, what you're saying here is like you have this combination. Like if you look at the Sargassum thing, it's this combination of laws, which we're not asking why do they exist. We're not looking for the root of them, right? That goes deeper and deeper, and there's really a bunch of questions there that we don't have the answers to. But when you see a result like this, you're basically just looking at a combination of different laws, different things, different components in the system working together, producing some result, right? And so it's hard for us to say why, whenever when we see it as kind of a problem. So we have this kind of like split thing, it's kind of like it's difficult for us to approach it the way that you're saying.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I think you're probably right. I think that, if people are not looking too much into this, it's probably harder to connect, to relate to the idea that nature is this one holistic program and nothing's redundant and nothing's random. But when you take the long view and when you look at these examples, these are things we can analyze, and there's this great series, nature series, One Strange Rock. We mentioned it a couple times. I mean, it's beautiful because they show the astronauts from space and how they look at planet Earth from outside. And it is this kind of, the overview effect and everything. You see how all the planet and everything in it is really all just one. It's clearly one. You see it in your own eyes. And they see also
it's contained in like one ball.
Because it's contained, and also they float around it. They basically circle, the planet. The planet also moves. So they see all planet from all of its kind of... so for instance, there's this whole, how do we breathe? How do we get our oxygen, right? Like, so a lot of our oxygen, maybe half of it, comes from these tiny microscopic creatures in the oceans called diatoms, right? That they basically produce the oceans. And if you go into the exploration of how do they live and how do they survive, then you see that there's this entire system where the trees in the Amazon, they suck up the water, and the water reaches the top and it becomes a flying river, which is the I think the biggest river in the world if it was an actual river. And then that huge river flying river hits the Andes, and that becomes like a wall that then it becomes rained again, and then it erodes the rock, and the rock becomes sediment for the diatoms to feed on, and the diatoms give us our oxygen, and everything is this perfect cycle, and it spans millions of years where the oceans become deserts again, and the deserts become oceans again, and it's all this way, it's all one, Tony's.
Wow, it's amazing.
Basically, it's just one thing. So clearly, if you don't have that perspective, I understand why it's challenging. But if you do, then Seaweed monster. Oh no, that's not
So
random.
I'll tell you who does. I'll tell you
That's
who doesn't have that perspective.
okay.
Do you remember Hurricane Katrina in 2005?
The news
I don't know if you
anchors.
guys-
The news anchors don't have that.
The news anchors definitely also don't. Do you guys remember?
Yeah.
Are you old enough? Were you born in 2005? Do you remember Hurricane Katrina?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Chris
yeah.
does because he was in Texas. So New Orleans, which is a
We
city,
had
which is a
friends
very
there
cool
that-
city.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so New Orleans is a city that's the whole city is below sea level. Not like the Dead Sea, which is however far. It's like less than 10 feet, but it's below sea level, a couple meters below sea level, the city.
Sure.
A
Which
portion
is
of-
significant.
Okay.
in
So
those
Hurricane
situations.
Katrina comes, of course, also a storm following all the same patterns, everything predictable. Okay, predictable. Like you said, this goes here, then rises here, then hits the Andes, it hits to this. But who doesn't follow the system? So, what, for example, after the city was completely under 6 feet of water and all these homes destroyed, what does the government do? What does the human?
Let's do it
government
again. Let's build it up again.
They wouldn't give you
Wow.
money to rebuild unless
That's
you
true, huh?
rebuilt in that same place below sea, in that same flood zone. If you want, if you said, you know what, I learned, I want to be more in tune with these flows. The water's going to dump here. I'm going to move to a higher ground or somewhere else. Can I have that rebuild money and go start my life somewhere? No. If you build back in that hole, they paid out like a couple $1 billion to people to rebuild back in the hole.
Doesn't
That
sound like a
flooded.
lot.
Couple billion to rebuild New Orleans. So that's the point here that, that's extreme. We could see what's going on here in Florida, right? It's like, but I want to go to the beach. I know there's seaweed there, but I want to go to the beach. And what
Well,
can
that's
we
the-
say to people? They shouldn't go to Florida. They shouldn't go to the beach.
That's exactly the problem, because you have all these things that are soft, just like you whenever you're like picture yourself, maybe as an astronaut looking at that whole thing, watching the video or whatever, and you don't really see the humans, right? At that point you're seeing these huge systems at work, like they're just playing with each other and things are happening. And then you come to the reality that there's like, you just kind of like go zhoo, and then you zoom in and like, oh, there's humans here. And what are humans? Humans are like these like things with their own desires. They have their own needs. It's like if you look at yourself, you're not thinking about what does nature have in store for me today? How can I prepare myself, because I need to make room, right? I need to make room for those things that are happening. Basically, we're going head to head against nature. It's kind of what it sounds like. You have like, you throw some humans on there. It's like, and they don't really know what to do.
And we
Imagine how
don't
much more
yeah, and we don't understand nature. That's I think that's where I wanted to go with this. We don't understand this program that we are in. It is smarter than us. It's created us. It is upper to us. It is our creator. Nature is our creator. I'm not saying anything religious here. I'm not saying anything weird here. Clearly, nature is our creator.
You sound pagan.
Show me someone that no, I'm not giving it human qualities or
Are you a Wiccan? Praying to nature?
So all I'm saying is like
No, hold on. I'm trying to stumble you for a second. Can you explain what you mean?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I'm saying that
You praying to trees? I don't understand what you mean.
Okay.
Nature's.
So I'm talking about the status, the perspective from the perspective through which we look at nature. We tend to look at nature as stuff around us. Yeah, it gives us life, but we need to just use it as best as we can. And if all of a sudden a giant seaweed
gotta live,
monster,
right?
Yeah, giant seaweed monster come to the beach, that's a bummer. That's kind of how I see it. It's a very narrow point of view. The earlier humans in the past had a different attitude to nature because, for lack of technology and so on, they were less dependent on nature. Right? Much more dependent on nature. They had less independence when it comes to nature. Like when it was hot, they had to find a shelter. When it was too cold, they had to find a shelter. They didn't have air conditioners. When the food grew in a certain place, they had to eat that and what nature provided, and that's it. They couldn't go to the supermarket and choose whatever they want, right? So humans over time have changed their attitude towards nature because we've grown more independent. But what I'm trying to say is who allowed us? Who made this evolution happen? What that too is nature. So the independence of the human being, the fact that we grew outside of nature's control, let's say, the fact that we grew away and apart, distant, we grew distant from nature,
and almost against it, in a
and
way,
almost
of the way you're
against it.
describing it.
But at the very least, at least not seeing it as a force upper to us that rules our life, governs our conditions of life, and we have to abide by it. We moved away from it, but that too happened. This is what I'm trying to say. That too, the growth of the human being and our attitude to nature also comes from the evolutionary program. It also
That's
comes
something
from,
different, though.
Why?
From
That feels
Why
different.
why does moving away from nature part of the evolutionary program?
because who else did you?
Yeah, because
create
it seems like
Did you create it?
it
Did you
seems like-
decide on it? Did we? Yeah.
Right.
What? That's what I'm
no,
trying to
because
say.
it seems like these convections in the ocean and the systems and everything. That sounds like nature, and then something else where you're saying, but then
Okay.
it also pushed us out of it. Seems like something different.
Yeah. Okay.
You know,
So
you get a feel.
I gotta. There's a thing I want to show you, and I think it'll take us deeper into this place I'd like to go. Just hold this in mind. Do you agree that over time, as we grew more independent and more developed in our technology and so forth, we became more independent in regards to nature, and we became less dependent on the forces of nature, and we became less sensitive to what that system, to our relationship with this system. Let's just put it like that. Okay?
Absolutely.
You buy that? Okay. Check this out. This is something that scientists found out recently. Like this was published at
I knew
the
it
end,
all along.
the end of last month. Yeah.
Right.
So plants emit, can you see this? Plants emit ultrasonic sounds in rapid bursts when stressed, scientists say. Thirsty or damaged plants produce up to 50 staccato pops in an hour, which nearby creatures may respond to. Researchers is fine. So essentially, to put it in simple terms, plants are crying when they're stressed. That's basically what we're seeing.
They're
here,
not supposed to cry because I've been messing with plants for my whole life. I didn't really
So
think they were like
we
alive
don't
or
see it.
living.
We don't see it. We don't hear it. We don't feel it. This is what scientists did, right? They put microphones, with a specific kind of sensitivity, frequency, and they were able to capture these bursts. The human ear can't detect these sounds, and they're too high pitched for the human ear. But
Thank God.
this way, yeah.
Right.
Anyway,
Amazon would have us all.
Imagine every time
deaf.
you're chewing a salad or something, it's like screaming for life.
Right.
No, like quiet down. And also kill the cow, not close to my home.
But imagine the hidden life that exists throughout nature, that flows through the whole system all the time, and we are oblivious to it completely because we're blind to it. We're blind and deaf to nature, is what I'm trying to
there's
say.
some psalms like the mountains, like the trees will sing.
Right.
There's all different
right.
kind of really
and
interesting, beautiful things.
And let alone the sources, the psalms and so forth. You still have people that we consider primitive tribal people, in some parts of the world, and certainly, decades ago and centuries ago, who were more sensitive to nature, and they could sense when a volcano would erupt. Now that sounds like mysticism in our world,
they also
right? It
communicate
sounds
with
like
plants, like
and exactly they knew how to take care of animals better, how to take care of plants better, when Jane Goodall, the famous primatologist who lived with like the monkeys for 30 years or something like that, when she met with Rob Lightman, our
Less
teacher,
of a household name these days. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone, today, especially younger people, probably don't know anything about her. But in any case, she's a person who lived for, I think, 27 years with primates as a researcher. Right? And
in the Congo.
This is seriously.
She was there.
She was there. She was that was her environment, and from becoming incorporated with them, we would say in a Kabbalistic language, right? She began, I remember there's this nice kind of conversation between her and our teacher when they met some decade or 2 decades ago or something like that, for something. And she was describing how, the jungle is full of life. And it's very clear when you live with the primates for a long time that when they wake up and and the sun comes up and all of the jungle comes to life, and the trees and the sun and the primates and the insects and the birds, everything together is clearly one harmony.
Party every day.
One party, one harmony. Exactly. So we're not invited to the party.
So bad.
We're not invited to the party. And the seaweed monster, in a very, very indirect way, is kind of an invitation or a reminder that there's a party that we're totally not understanding and not perceiving, not seeing. Because what is the seaweed? It's not a bunch of stuff, inanimate stuff that just is dumped on our ocean. It's intelligence. This is nature's intelligence that's playing itself out this way, and we just don't understand it. We don't understand what's the purpose of it, and that's the highest level of our detachment from nature, right? But we just even don't understand how it works and what it has. Feelings, it has desire. We and all of nature are made up of the same stuff.
But then
desire.
also, as it moves, it becomes home to all of these species. Also, like all of this life is like moving. Like all of these different systems are becoming alive inside of this whole thing. It's very, very interesting.
Right. So just think about the human attitude here. We hear it on our news that describe it as a bummer, basically as a problem, right? And we're thinking, man, we can't go to the beach. I'm not saying it's a problem to go to the beach, but it's like for a person who would be, I don't know, like a more ancient person who would be more connected, more sensitive to nature, that would be some sort of a signal from the system. That would be some sort of
It's
something
part of the conversation.
Part of the conversation with nature. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be missed also that it's by the way, everyone, we're not a bunch of scientists, climatologists, zoologists, and any of those things. We're lay people regarding all that. But that a lot of runoff from sewage plants, from farms, from clear cutting could be contributing to the development of this and the growth of this. So there's also some, it's like, I don't know, if the body reacts to some kind of, you become allergic to something, right? And the body is having an allergic reaction, and you're just trying to suppress the symptoms of the allergic reaction instead of realizing that you're allergic to something.
Yeah, we're not reading the message. Exactly. We're beating the messenger. We're not reading the message.
That's what we're doing. We're beating the messenger.
That's basically
I saw here in the chat, they're like, I don't remember who it was. I mean, I'm not making fun of it, but it's like, can't we just light it on fire? Like, this is let's just burn it. Like, just get rid of it, right? Like, this is the approach. Also, you have other people like, let's turn it into compost. They want to, how do we, there's also an approach of how do we use it, right? It's like, but that's still not. It's still. This is a nuisance. Let's get rid of it in an efficient, effective, maybe beneficial way, right? So there's like you have the approach of like, god dang it, get him off the beach.
Right. Okay. So what do we say from a Kabbalistic perspective? Is it not a nuisance? Of course it is, but that's just the superficial level. It's like it's like the headache or the whatever the symptoms. What Seth was describing, right? It's a symptom. It's something from nature is coming at us and it's annoying us. Okay. If that's where it ends, then there's no conversation. Then there's no.
So I have a right.
Yeah,
so I have. So
ahead.
let's just continue. Because mosquitoes here are super annoying. I mean, mosquitoes in general are really annoying, right? But you get bit once, and maybe you leave your windows open. You don't have screens. You get bit once, and you're like, I guess that's going to be annoying. You get bit a couple more times. Eventually, you do say, let's close the window, right? Because
Right.
eventually the cream that you're putting on doesn't really, it's annoying. You're like, okay, enough already. So there is some kind of, we do react in a certain way. We have like a pattern of reaction where it's like, okay, bite, bite, bite. And we're like treating the symptom, treating the symptom, treating the symptom. Let's approach the root cause. That's kind of the way that we approach a lot of the problems, which is like sting, 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 enough, root cause. Let's really nip it in the bud, as the, you know, it's like a way of an expression, right?
Right, but or in addition to what you're saying, the root treatment has to involve, even within the case of the seaweed, it's not just what we do with it on the outside. In some way, nature's system wants our attitude, our intention, our relationship, our heart. And it even appears in the mosquito that is biting you. There's nothing that escapes this program. If we're talking Kabbalah now, check this out.
It has to include everything.
There's this is something from Hebrew. I can put it on the screen. It's just like a Hebrew text. So I'm just gonna translate on the fly here just a few sentences. This is a conversation again with our teacher, Kabbalist Dr. Michael Leitman, and this is from a couple years ago. And it's about the relationship to plants. It's just such a different perspective.
It's a different approach. Okay.
Right?
All right.
Okay. So and yet it's so natural. Anyway, so the question was, it was in some sort of a program, TV conversation, right? So the question was, I have a neighbor. She takes care of the garden of our building, and she created really heaven out of nothing. She says she's sensitive to the plants. Do you think the plants are also sensitive to her? So the Kabbalist says, of course they do. They feel her, they respond to her, and she responds to them. Some people feel like they're talking to plants, and they do feel that the plants respond to them. You'll be able to see it. You'll be able to see it with some devices that can measure these responses. Remind you of something we just saw that scientists did just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So this is our teacher talking about this a couple years ago. You'll be able to see it with some devices, and certainly they feel if man is good or bad towards them. So, right?
Say it again. Say it again.
You'll be able to measure the response of plants with some devices, and certainly they feel whether the human is good or bad towards them. So the vegetative level, those plants, including the seaweed, feels us in a way that we don't even understand, is what I'm trying to say. And this whole system that seems to be outside of us is actually it's just a reflection of our relationship with parts of us. The plants, the seaweed, just as every other element in nature, is a part of us. That's why we're intimately connected to the rest of nature. We just don't know the language. We're deaf and blunt. And blunt, is that a word? Like our senses are blunt. We don't feel our relationship with nature, and that's the whole problem.
So let me paint more colors on it. You go to the Amazon. I was in Brazil recently. I didn't make it to the Amazon yet, but where I was in Brazil, even in Sao Paulo, it's green. Everything is green. It's lush. It's beautiful. The Amazon must be just unbelievable. Everybody knows that this is like the most biodiverse place on the whole planet, right? So there's a huge, if you go across the Atlantic Ocean to Africa, the top third is the whole Saharan desert. It's totally dry.
Desolate,
it's totally dust. But there was this video, you could Google it. NASA mapped this dust, this cloud of dust. I don't know how many.
Right.
this dust from the Amazon loaded with phosphorus and all this other stuff floats across from the Amazon, from the Sahara Desert, floats across the Atlantic and deposits in the Amazon to fertilize the Amazon.
Unbelievable.
So this
Yeah.
totally
It's incredible.
dry, dead, barren desert, the winds are coming across and fertilizing the most biodiverse living place on the planet. We have, you would think, like, what does the Amazon have to do with the desert? That's what we would feel. We're
desert bad, Amazon good.
Yeah, but the Amazon it relies on the desert.
Yeah, it's a single system.
It's such
and the relationship, even one of the beautiful examples and great film. Again, I would recommend anyone to watch it. The one about the fungi. I forgot the name of it, but
Fungus Among Us. Did I just pull that out?
Not fungus. No. Anyway, there was we talked about it on the show, but the what was the name of it?
Hold on, Netflix.
I can't remember.
Mushrooms?
Anyway,
No,
I just want to give it credit. I just want to give it credit and get people.
It's not called mushrooms. What do they call it?
It's not called mushrooms.
Underground.
It's not mycelia.
Mycelium.
Mushroom.
Yeah, it was about the mycelium. Anyway, it was about
fantastic fungi.
Fungi. There you go. There you go. So you remember how they beautifully covered how the all the planets on planet Earth are ultimately connected through these mycelium.
Can I give you an example? Can I give you an example of the
sure.
connected? I just read this article. Let me pull it up again because I'm not going to remember exactly. They said it basically an 8-year-old boy. Here it is. An 8-year-old boy disrupts 100 years of scientific knowledge regarding insects and plants. And basically what he found was that you have this tree and you have a wasp and you have the ants. They're working it together in this harmony. The wasps, they instigate this reaction from the tree, and what they want is this protective place for their larvae to grow. And in order to harvest that thing that it gets from the tree, it recruits the ants to do it. So, and this 8-year-old boy kind of like saw that this was happening. His dad was like a botanist or whatever, so he was like exposed to it a little bit. But he saw this like system in place working, and they found out that that's actually what's working. So it's there. It's there. It's just, do we want to look at it? Do we want to try to figure out where the connections are? And then we can see like, okay, so then where is our right? Because we're on that planet. You're one of those astronauts. You go, the humans are there. They're not living outside of that sphere, right? They're inside the system. So what are they doing? Like you said earlier, which let's go back to that then, because you said earlier, nature pushed us out, right? To kind of get this feeling of like being able to look at nature from this kind of outside view of like, oh, here's nature, like Jane Goodall. Look at what's going on over there. What's happening? There's nature, everything's one. And then you have the human, which is like, doesn't feel that, right? So then where is what? Right. So where do you go from here?
All of nature is connected. Yeah. All of nature is connected. The galaxies and the suns and the moons of the universe are connected to all of the things that are happening in planet Earth, the flora and fauna and so on. All of that system is connected it is an intricately connected system. Everything's connected in nature. Our bodies are clearly connected to nature and depend on the soil and the air and the wind and the rain and so forth. But somehow one thing is outside of that system, or appears to be outside of that system. And that thing is only our heart, our mind and heart. That's
what does that mean, actually?
So I spent my whole life not understanding this, okay? I didn't know that I was dependent on the Saharan desert, or I didn't know that, whatever's going on along the coast of England is making it over to the New Jersey, and the
like a baby in the world. Like, I didn't know that they prepared the whole world for
now
me.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay, it's been 51 minutes. I get it now. I understand that everything is connected, and I just heard you hint that not even what's going on Earth, but even the planets and the stars, it's all one system.
Of course it is. Yeah.
And not only that, I will find another place to vacation then. If that's not for me, I want to go along with the system. I realize that it's futile to keep fighting against the system and to keep doing it my own way, that everything is connected. and I want to be one with all of that and not just banging
Yeah.
my head against the wall anymore. Okay,
Sounds
now I
great.
get that too. Okay, now what?
Right. So the like Chris said, what does it mean that our minds and hearts are outside of the system, right? That's what we need to explore as human beings. That's what we need to get to the bottom of. The what it means ultimately in a very practical way. I don't know how sexy this is going to sound, but that's just reality. The still vegetative and animate, they're so interconnected to each other that there's not a thought that comes up in a dolphin's mind about taking from the system more than it actually needs. There's not a desire that comes up in a plant's mind of taking more than it needs. These phenomena only happen if they're sick. That's what we call cancerous behavior that we see throughout nature only in sick organisms. And by instinct, it does not happen. Now, the human mind and heart have every kinds of thoughts and desires besides,
Deforest the Amazon, pollute this, curse out that.
and even before the actions, our initial engine to life, the intention behind our mind and heart, meaning everything we want, everything we think, it comes from a separateness, a feeling of separateness. It comes from a perception that we are detached from the rest of reality, and therefore all we want is to benefit ourselves. It's as simple as that. That's what it means that our hearts and minds are outside the system. There's no self-benefit that is not contributing ultimately to the system in nature. That's only in humans. Yeah, go ahead.
So I've read in some Kabbalistic material that if you, don't want to say pray, if you think about yourself, if you want for yourself, you're actually causing yourself harm.
That's
this
exactly
is something that I've read.
Right. That's exactly what we're talking about. The I do have one more Rav Lightman quote.
Bring
here.
it.
It's just that all of it, the thing that we don't realize as humans is that it all depends on us. Because it sounds like, even from a scientific perspective, if you are a classic materials scientist, you think of humans as these little specks on planet Earth, and it's true, but that's the only picture you see. What we fail to see through the material perspective is that the entire universe happens in our consciousness. All of the galaxies and planets and constellations and the plants and the animals
Sargassum.
and the sargassum, exactly. This is a phenomenon arising in human consciousness. All of those other levels, they exist within us. Still, the vegetative, the animate, the human. Check out what our teacher said. This is from almost 20 years ago, 15 years ago. I have this in English. It's from my Google Keep, so I don't know how well you see the.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's good enough. Okay, so it says this: we humans radiate through the root of our soul. Now, of course, that needs to be explained, but let's just kind of flow with the text for a second. We humans radiate through the root of our soul a force, an influence that travels throughout the still vegetative and animate. They go up and down according to the human. And so man is responsible for the world for better or for worse. The still, the vegetative, the animate, and what happens to them depends on us. That is the attitude that is not even internalized by people who are consider themselves green and let's better the climate and so on.
Right.
That's
because that would basically be saying let's stop the deforestation so we stop the
exactly.
Everybody,
Exactly.
right? Everybody just wants to stop someone else from doing something. pretty
Yes.
much.
No one wants to, what we're not trying to do is make everything become part of us, become integrated, incorporated with nature is what we're lacking. If you feel the wholeness of your body, no one needs to tell you that you shouldn't chop off your finger, right? Don't do that.
It's instinctive,
because
Matt.
it's
Yeah, that's
instinctive
already
because
within us.
clearly it's all connected to you. This is you, and anything that that's gonna if you harm a skin cell, that's gonna matter to you,
Isn't it
right?
great though that we received that such an example, that we even have it, that we even are able to use that as an example?
Whoa, is Chris stuck?
Yeah, I think so.
He's stuck on a high point though.
Message
Okay.
him.
Yeah.
Chris, you got stuck.
Sorry.
You were
I
frozen
know. I saw
there
it connected
for
back to view. I was saying, isn't it amazing that nature gave us that example, this body,
the
we can
human
say,
body.
oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
my body. It's my
Yeah.
body. Ow. And we've had that example to work
Right.
on, to work with, to go forward.
Right.
That's pretty cool.
So is it possible that we have a much wider, more expansive body that we currently just don't feel? Bala Sulam, great Kabbalist of the previous century, writes that I'm gonna make it simpler because he basically writes that the attainment of spirituality is like the sensation of an organ that was sawn back to its body, and that's really
So our next degree,
yeah.
our next degree is coming to a perception in our feelings that the world, like reattaching reality back to me. Like I currently perceive myself as everything inside of this skin, and that's where my border is. And the spiritual attainment is to start including more and more and more reality to me.
It's actually putting myself back together. Yeah, putting myself back
great.
together.
And that's why it's not, that's why when we see stuff like wars that are still happening, right, there's a lot of suffering, right? Wars and whatever kind of other waves of destruction that nature can bring us. That's why it's worthwhile to accept that this is what's happening. Nature, you said earlier, nature pushed us out. And if you're going to ask the question, why did nature do that? It's so that we would have this thought. It's just a thought even. Oh, let's go back. And from that thought, from that desire, right? From that desire, you're able to feel that that's something you want to do. Here it's bad, right? We're in this like reality where we see sargassum, we see wars. Okay, it's bad until, then we can be given a thought that's saying, okay, maybe let's sew some things back together and that will be good. It's like we're thinking that, we're wanting that. That's something new, right? And we feel, you can even, if you think about it now, you feel pleasure from feeling that you're bringing things back into yourself. It's like already ingrained in our DNA that that's what we want to do. We just have to go towards it. That's why it's not worth it to do things opposite. Don't, let's give up on that. It's only going to bring us worse, right? Let's do the right things.
Last few words from that transcript, that Hebrew transcript that I have here, that should give us something to look forward to in terms of what happens when we're reattaching ourselves to nature. So the question that posed to the Kabbalist was, what kind of people, what kind of human beings do plants wish for? What do they want to see in us? Right? So the answer was, well, first of all, human beings that would treat them well. And from that good attitude, they'll even want to do something for them, because we are nourished and alive thanks to all that vegetation, as well as the air and the wind and everything else. And what are we doing for nature? Another question. So if we relate to the plants better, they'll treat us better? So Rav Lightman answered, of course they will. We'll begin to see how all of the plants on planet Earth will begin to work in our favor. will even feel like they take on that flavor and shape that we love the most. The more we love them,
That was a great find.
the more they'll do for us, because that's the nature of the vegetative level. Anyway, we're
Good find.
we're not even close to our potential when it comes to understanding what existence is, what life is, what nature is, and where it really needs to go. And we just see giant
So what can
seaweed
we
monster.
take away from this? Yeah. Clean the beach so we can go on vacation for spring break. So let's look at the story that nature is telling us. And let's start to get in touch with the storyteller of this great integral story. We'll be back next Thursday, 2 p.m.
Yes, we will.
to continue. It was great to be here. You guys are fun friends. I consider myself very lucky. We'll see you Thursday, 2 p.m. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Oh, yeah.
Look at the story. It's starting